My name is Michael. This is the most important story of my life. Many years have passed since that day. Today, I have a warm home. I have a good job. I have people who care about me. But there was a time when I had nothing. No family, no house, no money. Sometimes, not even food. People often ask me, "What changed your life?" I always smile and give the same answer. It all began with one small piece of bread. 5 years ago, I was 24 years old. I had moved to a big city to find work. I believed life would become better. I believed I would quickly find a job. But life had different plans. For 3 months, I searched every day. I visited offices, restaurants, shops, factories. Everywhere I went, I heard the same words. "We're sorry. We're not hiring. Try again next month." Little by little, my savings disappeared. Soon, I could no longer pay my rent. The landlord asked me to leave. I packed my small backpack and walked away. From that day, the streets became my home. The first night was the hardest. I slept on a park bench. The wind was cold. The ground was hard. I could not sleep. I looked at the stars and whispered, "Please, tomorrow will be better." Every morning, I looked for work. Every afternoon, I walked through the city. Every evening, I hoped someone would give me a chance. Sometimes I carried heavy boxes for shopkeepers. Sometimes I cleaned tables. Sometimes I washed cars. But those small jobs lasted only one day. The money was never enough. One cold evening, dark clouds covered the sky. The wind blew strongly. I had not eaten anything since the previous morning. My stomach hurt. I felt weak. I searched my backpack. There was only one coin. Just one. I walked to a small bakery. The warm smell of fresh bread filled the air. People were buying cakes and sandwiches. I quietly counted my coin. It was only enough for one small bread roll. The old baker looked at me kindly. "Is this all you have?" I nodded. "Yes." He smiled gently. Then he wrapped the bread in paper. As he handed it to me, he said, "I hope tomorrow is kinder to you." I smiled. "Thank you." I walked slowly toward the city park. I wanted to eat my bread quietly. I sat on an old wooden bench. My hands were shaking. I carefully opened the paper. The bread was still warm. Its wonderful smell made me even hungrier. I closed my eyes. I thanked God for the food. Then I lifted the bread toward my mouth. But before I could take the first bite, "Tunans," I heard a soft voice. "Excuse me." I opened my eyes. A little girl stood in front of me. She looked about 8 years old. Her clothes were old. Her face was dirty. She held the hand of a small boy. He looked only 5 years old. The little boy was crying quietly. The girl spoke again. "I'm sorry to bother you. My little brother is very hungry. We haven't eaten today." She quickly looked down. "I'm not asking for money. I just wanted to ask, do you know where we can find food?" I looked at the bread in my hands. Then I looked at the children. My stomach felt empty. My body was weak. I had nothing except that single piece of bread. A voice inside me said, "You need this food." Another voice whispered, "They need it more." For a few seconds, I could not move. Then I smiled. I broke the bread into 2 pieces. I gave the larger piece to the little boy, the smaller piece to his sister. "I'm sorry. This is all I have." The little girl looked surprised. "What about you?" I smiled. "I'll be okay." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. No one has ever shared their last meal with us. The little boy smiled for the first time. He happily ate the bread. Watching him smile somehow made my own hunger feel smaller. The little girl quietly said, "My name is Anna. This is my brother, Ben. I'm Michael." She looked at me. "I'll never forget you." I smiled. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "When life becomes better, help someone else." She nodded. "I promise." The 2 children walked away slowly. I watched them disappear into the crowd. But strangely, my heart felt full. The wind became colder. Night was falling. I leaned back on the bench. My stomach was empty, but my mind was peaceful. For the first time in many weeks, I felt rich, not because I had money, but because I had chosen kindness over fear. I didn't know it then, but someone had been watching everything from across the street. A man wearing a long gray coat had seen me give away my only piece of bread. He quietly smiled to himself. Then he whispered, That young man has something more valuable than money. He has character. I had never seen him before. I had no idea. That meeting was about to change my life forever. That night, I slept on the same old bench. The cold wind blew across the park. My stomach was empty, but my heart felt peaceful. Before closing my eyes, I looked up at the stars. I whispered, "God, I don't know what will happen tomorrow, but thank you for giving me the strength to help someone." Slowly, I fell asleep. The next morning, bright sunlight woke me up. Birds were singing in the trees. People were walking to work. Some smiled. Most were too busy to notice me. I stood up slowly. My body felt weak because I had not eaten since the day before. Still, I told myself, never give up. I picked up my backpack and started another day of searching for work. Around 10 o'clock, I was walking near the bakery where I had bought the bread. Suddenly, I heard someone call my name. "Young man." I turned around. It was the man in the gray coat. He smiled warmly. "You are Michael, right?" I looked surprised. "Yes, but how do you know my name?" "I heard the little girl say it yesterday." He stepped closer. "My name is Mr. Wilson. I saw everything." "What do you mean?" "I saw you give away your last piece of bread." I looked down. It wasn't a big thing. He smiled. "For hungry people, it was a very big thing." Mr. Wilson invited me into a nearby cafe. I felt embarrassed. "My clothes are dirty." He smiled. "Kindness is always welcome here." We sat near the window. A waitress brought hot soup, bread, and tea. The delicious smell filled the air. Mr. Wilson smiled. "Please eat." For a moment, I could not speak. I had not seen such a meal in many days. I quietly said, "Thank you." I ate slowly. Every bite tasted wonderful. When I finished, I felt stronger. Mr. Wilson looked at me. "Tell me about yourself." I told him everything. I told him about losing my job, losing my apartment, sleeping in the park, looking for work every day. He listened carefully without interrupting. When I finished, he remained silent for a few seconds. Then he asked, "If I offer you a job, will you work hard?" I looked at him in surprise. "Yes, I'll work harder than anyone." He smiled. "I believe you." Mr. Wilson owned a small furniture workshop. We repair old tables, chairs, and cabinets. It isn't a big business, but I need someone honest. He looked directly into my eyes. "Skills can be taught. Character cannot." Those words stayed in my heart forever. That afternoon, he took me to the workshop. The building was old but clean. 5 workers were busy sanding wood and painting chairs. The smell of fresh wood filled the room. Mr. Wilson introduced me. "This is Michael. He starts today." Everyone welcomed me with smiles. No one asked why my clothes were old. No one judged me. For the first time in months, I felt respected. My first task was simple. I swept the floor, carried wood, cleaned the tools, organized the storage room. I worked carefully. I wanted to prove that Mr. Wilson had made the right decision. At the end of the day, he called me into his office. "You worked well." I smiled. "Thank you, sir." He handed me a small envelope, my first day's salary. I looked at it with tears in my eyes. "This is the first money I've honestly earned in months." He smiled. "And it's only the beginning." Before leaving, Mr. Wilson gave me another surprise. "I've rented a small room above the workshop. You can stay there until you get back on your feet." I couldn't believe my ears. "A room?" "Yes. It isn't fancy, but it's warm." I could barely speak. "Thank you." "No," he replied. "Thank yourself. You opened this door when you shared your last piece of bread." That evening, I entered my small room. There was a simple bed, a wooden chair, a small table, and one window overlooking the street. It wasn't a luxury hotel, but to me, it felt like a palace. For the first time in many weeks, I slept indoors. I closed my eyes with a grateful heart. Days turned into weeks. I learned how to repair chairs, polish old tables, paint wooden cabinets. Every day I became better. Mr. Wilson often said, "Michael, never stop learning." I always answered, "I won't." One evening after work, I walked through the same park. I looked around, hoping to see Anna and her little brother, Ben, but they were nowhere to be found. I asked a few people if they had seen them. Everyone shook their heads. As I walked back toward the workshop, I whispered, "I hope they're safe." Deep inside, I knew I had to find them someday. I had no idea that our next meeting would reveal a heartbreaking truth, one that would change the course of my life forever. 3 months passed. My life slowly became better. Every morning I woke up early. I cleaned my small room. I thanked God for another day. Then I went downstairs to the workshop. Mr. Wilson trusted me more every day. I learned how to repair expensive furniture. I learned how to speak politely with customers. Most importantly, I learned that honest work brings peace to the heart. Although my life had changed, I never forgot Anna and Ben. Almost every Sunday, I walked through the city. I visited parks, bus stations, small shelters, old streets. I hoped I would see them again, but every week ended the same way. No sign of them. Sometimes I wondered, were they safe? Had they found food? Did they have a place to sleep? These questions stayed in my mind. One cold evening, after finishing work, I decided to visit a small church. The church often served free meals to homeless people. I thought, maybe Anna and Ben come here. When I entered the dining hall, I looked around carefully. There were many families, old people, children. Then suddenly, I saw a familiar face. It was Anna. She looked thinner than before, but I recognized her immediately. Anna, she turned around. For a second, she looked surprised. Then a big smile appeared on her face. Michael, she ran toward me. I smiled happily. It's so good to see you. I looked around. Where is Ben? Her smile slowly disappeared. She looked down at the floor. I felt my heart beat faster. Anna, where is your brother? She quietly whispered. He's in the hospital. My heart sank. What happened? He became very sick. He had no food for many days. The cold weather made him weaker. He has pneumonia. Tears filled her eyes. The doctors are trying to help him. Without thinking twice, I said, "Take me to him." We walked quickly to the city hospital. The children's ward was quiet. When we entered the room, I saw little Ben lying in bed. He looked pale. His small hands rested quietly on the blanket. But when he saw me, he smiled. "You're the bread man." I laughed softly. "Yes, I guess I am." I sat beside his bed. "How are you feeling, Ben?" "A little better. The nurses are very kind." "I'm glad." He looked at me with innocent eyes. I still remember the bread. It was the best bread I ever ate. His simple words touched my heart. I realized sometimes people don't remember expensive gifts. They remember kindness. A doctor entered the room. He smiled politely. "Are you family?" I looked at Anna. Then I answered, "No, but I'd like to help." The doctor explained that Ben needed medicine and better nutrition after leaving the hospital. Anna looked worried. "We don't have any money." I quietly reached into my pocket. It contained almost all the money I had saved during the last 3 months. I looked at it, then I handed it to the doctor. "Please use this for Ben." Anna's eyes became wide. "No, Michael, you worked so hard for this." I smiled. "I can earn more money. But Ben needs help today." The doctor nodded respectfully. "Your kindness will make a real difference." That night, as I walked back to my room, my savings were almost gone. But strangely, I didn't feel poor. I felt thankful, because now I had something more valuable than money. I had the ability to help. The next morning, I told Mr. Wilson everything. He listened carefully. Then he smiled proudly. I knew I made the right choice. I looked surprised. "What do you mean?" He replied, "Michael, a good worker repairs furniture, but a good person repairs hearts. I see both in you." His words filled me with courage. A week later, Ben was finally strong enough to leave the hospital. Anna hugged me tightly. "I don't know how we can ever repay you." I smiled. "You already did." She looked confused. "When?" "The day you reminded me. That kindness always comes back." She smiled through her tears. "I'll never forget." Before they left, Ben reached into his pocket. He took out a tiny wooden bird. It was old. One wing was slightly broken. "I made this. I want you to keep it." I carefully accepted the small gift. It wasn't expensive, but it became my greatest treasure. Even today, it still sits on my desk. Whenever I look at it, I remember one simple truth. The value of a gift is not measured by its price, but by the love with which it is given. That evening, I stood outside the workshop and watched the sunset. I made a quiet promise to myself. If my life continues to improve, I will spend it helping people who have no one. I didn't know then that promise would completely change my future, and years later, it would lead me to build something that began. With one small piece of bread, 1 year passed. Life was very different now. I had a steady job, a small room, clean clothes, 3 meals a day. Every morning I thanked God, not because I had everything, but because I had enough. I never forgot the days when I had nothing. Those memories kept me humble. Mr. Wilson became more than my employer. He became like a father to me. He taught me many lessons. One afternoon, while we were repairing an old dining table, he said, "Michael, do you know the difference between success and significance?" I smiled. "I'm not sure." He placed his tools on the table. "Success is when your life becomes better. Significance is when you make someone else's life better." I stayed silent. His words touched my heart. That evening, I wrote those words in my notebook. Every Sunday, I visited the church again. This time, I was not looking for food. I was carrying food. I packed sandwiches, bread, fruit, and bottles of water. Sometimes I served 20 people, sometimes 50. I knew every hungry face had a story. Some had lost jobs. Some had lost families. Some had lost hope. I never judged anyone, because once I had stood exactly where they were standing. One Sunday afternoon, I heard someone call my name. "Michael." I turned around. It was Ben. He looked healthy and happy. He ran toward me and hugged me tightly. Anna walked behind him. She smiled brightly. "You wouldn't recognize him now, would you?" I laughed. "No. He's much taller." Ben grinned. "And I go to school now." Those words filled my heart with joy. Anna told me wonderful news. A local charity had helped them find a small apartment. She had found work at a bookstore. Ben loved reading stories. "I want to become a teacher someday," he said proudly. I smiled. "You'll be a wonderful teacher." He looked at me, only because someone believed in me. Months passed peacefully. Then one morning, something unexpected happened. Mr. Wilson did not come to work. That had never happened before. I became worried. I went to his house. His housekeeper opened the door. She looked sad. "Mr. Wilson is in the hospital." My heart skipped a beat. I hurried to the hospital. Mr. Wilson smiled weakly when he saw me. "I'm glad you're here." I sat beside him. "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly. "I'm getting older, Michael. The doctors say I need to rest." For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. A few days later, he called me to his office. He handed me a small envelope. "Open it." Inside was a letter. It said that Mr. Wilson wanted me to manage the furniture workshop. I looked at him in shock. "Sir, I can't." He smiled. "Yes, you can. I've trusted you for years. This workshop needs someone honest. It needs you." Tears filled my eyes. I don't know what to say. He gently replied, "Say yes." I accepted. From that day, my life changed again. I worked harder than ever. I treated every worker with respect. I remembered what it felt like to be ignored. So I listened to everyone. I encouraged young workers. I gave chances to people who needed a fresh start. Many people asked me, "Why do you hire people with no experience?" I always answered, "Because someone once believed in me." One evening, I received a small package. There was no name, only a note. It read, "Dear Michael, thank you for the piece of bread you shared years ago. That day gave us hope when we had none. You taught us that kindness is stronger than hunger. We will never forget you. With love, Anna and Ben." Inside the package, there was a fresh loaf of bread. Warm, soft, just like the one I had shared years earlier. I held it in my hands, my eyes filled with tears. Sometimes, life comes full circle. That night, I stood by my window. I looked at the city lights. Then I made another promise. This workshop will not only repair furniture, it will repair lives. From that day onward, whenever someone truly needed work, I gave them a chance, not because they were perfect, but because I remembered the person I used to be. Years later, our workshop became one of the most respected businesses in the city. People didn't come only for furniture repairs. They came because they knew we believed in second chances. Every new worker heard the same story. The story of one hungry man, one small piece of bread, and one decision that changed everything. As I looked at the wooden bird Ben had given me years ago, I smiled. I finally understood something very important. Kindness never disappears. It travels from one heart to another, sometimes immediately, sometimes years later, but it always finds its way back. 10 years have passed since the evening when I shared my last piece of bread. Sometimes I sit quietly in my office. I look at the little wooden bird on my desk. Then I smile. It reminds me that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life forever. Sometimes, it can change many lives. Our furniture workshop had become successful, but I wanted to do something more. Every winter, I remembered the cold nights when I had slept on a park bench. I remembered my empty stomach. I remembered feeling invisible. I never wanted another person to feel that way. So I started a small project. Every Friday evening, we prepared fresh meals. Bread, soup, fruit, hot tea. Then our workers and volunteers walked through the city. We gave free meals to anyone who was hungry. We never asked questions. We never judged anyone. We simply smiled and said, "Here, this is for you." At first, we served 20 people, then 50. Soon, hundreds of people came every week. Many volunteers joined us. Some were teachers, some were students, some were business owners. Everyone wanted to help. I realized something beautiful. Kindness is contagious. When one person chooses kindness, others begin to do the same. One snowy evening, while serving food, I noticed a young man sitting alone on a bench. He looked tired. His clothes were old. His face reminded me of myself years ago. I walked toward him. "Hello." He looked up slowly. "I don't want charity." I smiled. "This isn't charity. It's dinner." I handed him a warm loaf of bread and a bowl of soup. He stared at the bread for a long moment. Then tears filled his eyes. He whispered, "I haven't eaten since yesterday." Those words took me back in time. I knew exactly how he felt. We talked for a long time. His name was David. He had lost his job. He had nowhere to live. He felt that nobody cared about him. I smiled gently. "I know that feeling." He looked surprised. "You do?" I nodded. "I once slept on this very bench." He looked around in disbelief. "What?" I laughed softly. "Life can change. You just have to keep believing." The next morning, I invited David to the workshop, just as Mr. Wilson had once done for me. I gave him a chance. He started by sweeping the floor, cleaning tools, carrying wood, exactly as I had done years before. Some people wondered why I trusted him. I answered with the same words Mr. Wilson had once told me. Skills can be taught, but character cannot. David worked honestly. He learned quickly. Months later, he became one of our best workers. One evening, he said, "Michael, you saved my life." I smiled. "No, I simply passed on the kindness someone once showed me." A few weeks later, we organized a special community dinner. More than 300 people came. Families, children, elderly people, volunteers, everyone shared food together. As I stood near the entrance greeting people, I heard a familiar voice. "Michael." I turned around. It was Anna. Beside her stood Ben. But he wasn't a little boy anymore. He was a young man. He was wearing a neat suit. Around his neck was an ID card. I smiled. "Ben." He hugged me tightly. "I have something to tell you." "What is it?" He smiled proudly. "I became a teacher." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I remembered his childhood dream. Years ago, he had told me, "I want to become a teacher." Now, his dream had come true. Ben looked at me and said, "Every year I tell my students one story." I smiled. "Which story?" He answered, "The story of a hungry man who shared his last piece of bread." I laughed softly. "You still remember?" "I always will." He smiled. "That story teaches children that kindness is never wasted." Later that evening, Mr. Wilson arrived. He was older now. His hair was completely white. He walked slowly with a cane, but his smile was exactly the same. He looked around the crowded hall. Then he whispered, "You've built something beautiful." I smiled. "You started it." He shook his head. "No, you did. The day you chose kindness over hunger." As the evening ended, everyone gathered for a group photograph. Workers, children, teachers, families, volunteers. Before the photo was taken, someone asked me, "Michael, what is the secret of your success?" I smiled for a moment. Then I answered, "My success did not begin with money. It began with one small piece of bread. The day I had almost nothing, I learned that kindness is the greatest wealth a person can have. That night, after everyone had gone home, I walked alone to the old city park. The same bench was still there. I sat quietly. The wind felt gentle. The stars shone brightly above me. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you. Not for my business, not for my house, not for my success, but for teaching me one unforgettable lesson. Sometimes, the greatest miracle begins when we choose to give, even when we have very little." As I stood up to leave, I noticed a small child feeding pieces of bread to a hungry bird. The child smiled happily. His mother smiled too. I realized something beautiful. Kindness never truly ends. It simply moves from one heart to another, and then to another, like a light that never goes.